Let's bring in Rosalind Chou. She's an associate professor of sociology at Georgia State University. 2,800 cases, Mark mentioned. This isn't new. We've heard a lot of anti-Asian rhetoric, especially in the last year or so after the coronavirus, the former President Trump kind of fueling some of this. Is this a natural progression, kind of a cause effect? The nasty rhetoric then fuels this sort of thing?
Absolutely. And, when I spoke earlier when the pandemic broke out, and we've seen with things like the violent insurrection, words have consequences. And so hearing this type of rhetoric, Mike, for over a year, and the attacks on China for this virus, it only makes sense that they're going to target people, in the United States that they can't tell their ethnicity or nationality or origin, but they will attack, and we see this huge increase in hate crimes.
Rosalind, Mark News story is very tough to watch, especially this 91-year-old man being assaulted. We heard from Jojo Au, the community activist featured in Mark's story, and she asked the question, why isn't anything happening? I mean, she did something about it, getting security guards, but that's an important question. Why isn't this being addressed?
So in the history of Asians in the United States, we are seen as this other minority to pit against other people of color. And so in terms of that, it's a huge invisibility. White supremacy acts in a way that we are put on a pedestal to shame other people of color, but at the same time are second-class citizens. And so it becomes this invisible visibility, and in that way, we don't see the same communal outrage, and because of all the different nations, over 40 nations are represented by Asian Americans. So, and there's also different languages. So while forced to be a collective umbrella group in the United States, certainly the history doesn't dictate that. So there's a lot of different elements at play where Asian Americans are used against other people of color, and then we don't see this collective action.
It's apparent watching this story and of course talking to you that this is a serious problem. It's not something new. What needs to be done?
Well, I think what they're doing in the Bay Area, especially, are bringing a lot of attention to it and getting the news out in the media, and reaching more to all different people who can empathize like other people of color in terms of a similar type of treatment when we deal with systemic racism in the United States. And then we've also seen some celebrities come out and be vocal about this. And so what we need is allies across all racial lines to really speak on this. And, obviously the Biden administration has a different rhetoric and is addressing this as well. So that's certainly a start.
Rosalind, before we let you go, one of the things that really resonated in that report for me was the fact that we heard that the Asian American community is concerned that these attacks are chilling and traumatic. Talk to me about the fear factor. I mean, what more can be done from a mental health standpoint? And then also talk to me about, people just going out for a walk and looking over their shoulders and being worried about this sort of thing.
Certainly, and obviously this is personal for me as well. Ever since the pandemic broke out and this type of rhetoric started to really be abundant, I fear for my parents. They're both in their 70s. My sisters and I, we don't want them to go outside. We don't want them to go and do their jobs because we fear that anyone could attack them. And certainly, just in my neighborhood, there were posters, anti-Chinese posters up, walking the dog, and you could see them hanging up in the parks. And so certainly, living in fear, we're already in fear of a pandemic, a global pandemic, but on top of that, being blamed for that with this xenophobic, racist rhetoric, and then on top of that, psychologically, like you mentioned, it's a huge weight on the shoulder of a number of people of color, but Asian Americans in this case.
Thanks so much for talking to us about this really important topic. Rosalind, thanks so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
Thank you.